Everybody go to Revelation 6 in Bible Hub, scroll in the light blue screen below the main title to ISR. Click on the ISR version that was printed in 1998, and you'll see the scriptures ISR 1998 in parentheses, and follow along as you do it. I will read it back to you, and I will post it in the video so that you can see all of the side-by-side comparisons. Now, I'm going to read where I've interjected and how I came to these conclusions. Revelation 6, the scriptures, ISR 1998. And when I saw the Lamb opened one of the seals, and I heard one of the four living creatures saying like a sound of thunder, "Come and see." And I looked and saw a white horse, and he who sat on it holding a bow. And a crown was given to him, and he went out overcoming and to overcome. And when he opened the second seal, I heard the second living creature saying, "Come and see." So the first seal is up until verse 3. What you've got in those two sentences are very contrasting details to George Washington in the Revolutionary War, because he had a white horse. He rode on it primarily, and the description, he who sat on it, being the white horse, was holding a bow, not a bow and arrow or quiver, a bow like a shooting bow. He would bow to people because he felt it beneath him to shake hands. Even some suggested that he was probably a germaphobe too, and that was his excuse. And he went out overcoming and to overcome, which he ended up did winning the war. When he, aka Yusha, who had the ability to open the seals, remember there's another verse in Revelation that says, "I saw one able to open the seals." Remember that verse? That's what that is. I heard the second living creature saying, "Come and see." And another horse, a fiery red one, went out, and it was given to the one who sat on it to take peace from the earth, and that they should slay one another, and a great sword was given to him. Verses 3 and 4 are very exemplary of World War I being the second seal, and a fiery red or a mahogany horse was owned by Woodrow Wilson, that would have been during that time, who was given power to take peace from the earth and to make people kill each other. Coincidentally, in his death, he was given two swords. One was put onto his tomb, but when he was alive, he was given the N1902 dress sword, which is one of the largest, if not the largest sword ever created in the world for a military unit as a reward or a weapon. But where I'm going with this is that these details, they add up. Now, I've already matched all of them up to Revelation Seal 5. And when you have these kinds of comparisons, then you can determine how it all unfolds and what the end result is. But if you don't try to interconnect these scriptures, you won't understand how to deal with it. My end goal would hopefully be to bring people to knowledge so that they can come to salvation and be prepared spiritually for what's going to happen, which is the mark of the beast. That's what all of this around us is causing. It's becoming the mark of the beast, people. Remember, the entire world got locked down and is still in repercussion from it. When he opened a third seal, I heard the third living creature say, "Come and see." And I looked and saw a black horse, and he who sat on it holding a pair of scales in his hand. Now, the seals are perpendicular with horses because these key leaders who dignify which seals were what all had horses, and that is a very contrasting detail that's very important to discovering what the seals in Revelation 6 and 7 mean. Because it gets to a certain point where there are no more horses in the seals. And the reason for that is because right around the time of World War II is when they stopped the tradition of horses being kept in the White House. Outside of that, in the fourth seal, we'll go and verify it even more. But these details are elements that demonstrate where we are in Scripture, and that you shouldn't ignore them, particularly so that you can strengthen your family and your loved ones for what's coming, which is the mark of the beast, people. There's no doubt about it in my mind. And anybody sitting here telling you that you're going to be taken up out of here by chariots, miraculously preach of rapture, they're not doing nothing but telling you falsities. And because of those falsities, they're misguiding people into a sense of false hope. And my concern is that when real trial does come, you'll be taken aback and you'll walk away from your faith because you'll see the errors that they taught you the entire time. From my understanding, that will make you the whore that rides the beast rather than refuses the mark and allows your death, and the sacrifice becomes a forced law, so that you return with all of the other first resurrection believers. Since, well, you could say the time of Daniel, primarily the majority from then on at the crucifixion and such, because of when Yeshua was walking around teaching people these things. When I heard the midst of the four living creatures say, a quart of wheat for a day's wages and 3 quarts of barley for a day's wages, and do not harm the oil and the wine, you have another detail going alongside with the president who had the black horse during the Great Depression, and it was Herbert Hoover. Every one of these presidents I've listed off up until the third seal have all had horses that match these colors. This is all verifiable, and you can go and research it, how I came to these conclusions. And then after that, you can take it into context yourself. If you come across this, this is how you can correlate the times you're in, so that you know what to do when to do it. And what I'm going to tell you is, when that mark of the beast becomes a forced law, you will need to allow your death, and you will have your family go with you, because it will be a migration of true believers who go to heaven based on their faith, and then they're resurrected after Yeshua returns. And if they have accepted the mark of the beast, they will have to make sure that they go and worship our Messiah, Yeshua. Not Jesus. Don't call him Jesus. That's not his real name. His name is Yeshua. So that when he returns, they have to go and worship him for Feast of Tabernacles once a year. And if they don't do it, no rain falls on their crop. That demonstrates in other scriptures, I believe either in Zechariah or Jeremiah. I'm going to lean towards Zechariah more. But there will be flesh on the earth. Those people, the non-believers who accept the mark, will fade away, are raised by resurrected believers, and eventually will return back into the kingdom. So those people who don't have faith will subject their children to servitude. So there will be no more need for confession, people, which goes to demonstrate, if there's no need for confession in a walk of faith, because you have the Messiah in his temple for the 1,000 years reigning over the entire earth, and his resurrected saints are with him, you'll have all the proof you need to know that he was real the entire time, and that it's going to have a profound impact on the children. So it all falls in accordance. It's just a matter of how you assess the actions, the repercussions, the results. I mean, it all makes sense once you come to understanding how salvation ties in with the facts of geography, with the connectivity of the beasts, and so that you understand where all this is going to come from. Now, I gathered that China was the beast that was, is not, and will be when John wrote that, so he was being literal. China existed in the Bronze Age, destroyed themselves. They weren't called China back then, obviously, but their region people destroyed themselves and then essentially vanished. Alexander never made it to conquer them. So they had plenty of time to repopulate without any kind of threat outside, but they weren't established. So it was like people surviving however they could with no leadership. Rise out of the early Qi dynasties, and you had 10 dynasties, and after the third or the fourth one, I think, Genghis Khan took over and started his horde of warfare. Then after that, they kept progressing over, I think, a period of 1,300 years. They fell, and then America handed over a lot of their jobs to the Chinese for essentially low-cost wage working. When he opened the fourth seal, he heard the fourth living creature say, "Come and see." And I looked, and I saw a pale horse, and he who sat on it had the name Death. And the grave followed with him, and authority was given to them over a fourth of the earth to kill with the sword, with hunger, and by the beasts of the field. Now you have very detailed description in here. It says, given authority over a fourth of the earth. How do you correlate a fourth of the earth with World War II? Is it by countries, mass population density? Is it by economic values? I mean, it could be all of the above. The majority of World War II was an Allied effect, so you can kind of see how it's a fourth of the earth. The pale horse was the Lipizaner. I found out that Hitler had a pale horse that was called a Lipizaner. This rider's named Death. Adolf, as in Adolf Hitler, is derived from Adolfo, which means death in his language. And the grave followed with him. And the grave is like, wherever that dude went, he was on all fronts killing people. Salvation still stood, even during the Holocaust. If those Jews weren't saved by salvation, confession that they believed in the Messiah, they have to go to the second resurrection. If anybody has to go to the second resurrection, you may have had faith or confessing, but your actions are a judgment against you. If you continue to live in sin, you will be weighed on those judgments. But to be a martyr and give your life over for the mark of the beast says in Revelation, and I think it's because of the mass amount of believers that are present on the earth at that generation, which is now, like the Spanish that were killed, and the Protestant movements, and et cetera, all the believers that were killed in Russia. I think they outnumbered the Holocaust by 2 to 2.5 times more. And if you do this, then you factor in all these things. It becomes the greater picture that explains where you are in Scripture. And that should be any focal point for anybody to sit there and say, well, if this is accurate and we're that close to it and we know what to do, are we ready to do it? In my opinion, World War II was Allied effect to create wars so that they could stipulate control. I really do, because it was even suspected that Hitler wasn't killed, that he fled to Argentina, and then from Argentina there was a lot of evidence of German occupation there, and it just goes without saying. They would starve people, kill them with the sword, which up until World War II, whether it was mechanical or not, infantry was still one of the best ways to take over. They had planes and they had the abilities to bomb and whatnot, but infantry was still more effective, if I remember correctly. And the beasts of the earth is another added effect. There was animal recruiting at the time as well, where they would enrage these beasts with chemicals and then release them into the public to attack people and kill them. That's verifiable too. Everything I've just said is verifiable and comparable, so it explains why it says these things. And when he opened the fifth seal, I saw under the altar the beings of those having been slain for the word of Elohim and for the witness which they held. That's all generations. That's not just this generation. Because remember, you had the Holocaust. You had all the Christians who were killed during Stalin's rule, or the leader before him. But there were, like I said, 2.5 more times the amount of the Holocaust massacred. And it says all these people cried out with a loud voice, saying, "How long, O Master, set apart and true, until you judge and avenge our blood on those who dwell on the earth?" Because when he resurrects his saints, they are going to kill a lot of people. They're not going to kill everybody, but they're going to kill a lot of people. Scripture dignifies this. And there was given to each one a white robe. And white robes in heaven mean purity. And they were told that they should rest a little while longer until both the number of their fellow servants and their brothers who would be killed as they were was completed. Now, the two witnesses' death isn't the completion, because you're going to have what I don't mean this in a derogatory way, but scragglers who are surviving off the land who have faith, and you'll have people who are essentially held hostage or kidnapped or imprisoned, or what other kind of circumstances could it be that didn't get the chance to refuse the mark and allow their death. Similar conditions. Those are the people that verse says those who are left behind will be caught up in the heavens. That's after the mark of the beast primarily finished and the death of the two witnesses, because they'll be tried and true. They're going to go through all of that and plus wrath to get to that point. It'll just be in the minuscule amount anyway, versus the primary walkers of faith, those people who are going to give their lives over for the mark of the beast, that they'll naturally be taken up when the angels come in and gather the rest of the believers. Then it'll be finished, and when it's finished, Messiah returns, sets up the 1,000-year reign. There's some other details, but that's the greater picture of it. And I looked, and he opened the sixth seal, and I saw a great earthquake came to be, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood. Now I'm going to stop there, because I don't need to go into the seventh seal. When it says he opened the fifth seal, people, I saw under the altar the beings of those having been slain, killed, for the word of Elohim, for the truth of Yahweh, and for the witness which they held, their testimony. Your testimony is extremely important, and all I can sit here and tell every one of you in the denominations is if you reject that opportunity, you'll condemn yourself for eternity in hell, because anybody who accepts the mark is determined to go to hell, and that's what Scripture says. Now, I don't have all the verses off the top of my head, but you can support what I'm saying. Just type it in, when you have a contrasting verse. You can question it just by Google and go straight to the verse and see that I'm speaking the truth. In between all of this, though, we might still have a couple more years. I don't know. I don't really care. If it was up to me, I'd want to get out of here as soon as possible. And I would urge all of you to as well, because heaven is an eternity of peace. Remember that. this is also the final harvest, so you won't never get another chance. So what I'm going to say is just I strongly urge everybody, fathers, husbands, mothers, and wives of all families who has an inkling of faith to get out there and demonstrate to your children and at least tell them that this is building up to the mark of the beast. And the reason for that is because if they're old enough to make their decision and they end up rejecting faith and they accept the mark, they're going to go to hell, people. That's all there is to it. And if you love your family, you won't allow them to destroy themselves like that. I can't sit here and honestly say how much time exactly we have left, but I see a lot of key elements building up very fast with the economy in China. Understand that when I sit here and I claim China is the beast, that a mark of the beast comes from China. So if China establishes an mark so that people can buy, sell, work, or trade faster than everybody else, and they have one of the highest counts of people in the world as far as a nation, you have support for the verse that says, and who can fight the beast? Who is able to wage war against it? If Europe and Russia and America follow in connectivity with that, we may not even need to necessarily go to a war. It could just be because China has the highest yield of export in the world, and since the world relies so heavily on China, whatever happens to China, whether it's an intended effect or even an unnatural effect, it's going to affect the rest of the world and put us in the same position. I want you to think about that. As far as the beast goes, you can take the nations, the kingdoms, the statistics I think that are in Malachi video, because I have the majority of my discovered scriptures connecting all of this in it, in case anybody ever wanted to read it. But there's so much of it on all the comments section, it probably looked like jargon to most people, so they wouldn't want to go through it all. So I'm going to try to find the statistics for it and see if I can give you a quick demonstration as to why China is the beast. And it's in Revelation 18. So when it came to all these details of these materials, like the bronze, iron and marble, precious wood, citron wood, every object of ivory and every object of most precious woods, cinnamon, incense, fragrant oil, and frankincense, China was fourth or above in almost all these categories as far as export. Fine flour and wheat, China had, since 2019, almost 134.5 million tons exported. They were third in the world as far as cattle and sheep, third in horses, third in cart carriages and cars, and ironically, Scripture even describes bodies. I assimilated that as 1.42 billion lives of men, including women, and as far as slavery for slave labor was still occurring since 2019. So you can match all these statistics and see who comes out on number one and see why I assimilated that China was the beast. When you do that, it just goes to fit in. Well, if China's the beast, the scripture says who is like the beast, then you know who to wage war against, or who would be able to fight them. Even if it's an economic war, people, because it can't really go thermonuclear and it can't really go into a ground scale war, for the sense that scripture says the entire world rejoices over the death of the two witnesses. So that means that either right before the death of the two witnesses, maybe the rest of the entire world, it could be implied, or that third of the earth, it doesn't happen until right after the death of the two witnesses. But if you look at the details, it's so close to the death of the two witnesses when it comes to the trumpets and the destructions, it kind of speaks volumes of how this all unfolds. And you can simulate who, you can see what, when, where, how, and why, you know what to do. And if you can get to that point where you understand what Scripture really is doing for us, and that He has truly prepared the way for us in the end times, you'll know what path it is you have to take. Now, in between here and that time on out, should anybody come across this, I would say very carefully, do not look forward to the two witnesses being heroes. Do not expect them to run around healing people. Their duties are to torture the world. And I already know why. It's because it will usher those believers, those true believers willing to refuse the mark, to get out of the world as soon as possible to avoid the coming wrath, because they're torturing the world isn't the full wrath, people. And the wrath will be the entire world living in a grassless world with a third of the sky and a third of the sun and a third of the moon all being darkened because of this catastrophic destruction, and it's going to have a profound impact on the economy and how people function and how you're going to survive. And what's going to happen is you're going to have complete and total lawlessness. It'll be a self-inflicting punishment. It'll just be madness, people. And if you're here when that happens, it's because you didn't listen to the message when you had the chance. And it won't stop here at this video. When those two witnesses are put on the stage before everybody, you're going to be given your chance. Me saying this right now is just trying to help people understand what it's coming to. And if you do that, you'll conquer yourself sooner than later, which is most important, so that you lock it into your heart and your mind and your body and your spirit to allow your death. And with that being said, death happens to everybody. To say that you aren't afraid to die means you've conquered death already. But to live it when it happens is a whole different story. To have the ultimate faith in you, and no matter when you die, is the ultimate conquering. It's the ultimate overcoming. And that's why they won't be healing people, because there really probably won't be a need for it. I'm sure that they have the faith to do it. I just don't think that because of the message and because they'll have to torment the world, that they're going to go against you wishes and heal a bunch of people just so that they can live into wrath. That won't make sense. And the irony is that when they're killed, a wicked generation will receive the sign that they ask for, and when they see their resurrection, the doors are closed, people. It's the sign of Jonah. That's what it says in Scripture. None will receive a sign except for that of Jonah. And Jonah was resurrected. If you read the story, when he was cast overboard, he drowned, he sunk, and he sat with the seaweed. And then the whale came by and delivered him to the shore. So that means that he was resurrected within the 3 days from being picked up on the bottom of the waters and then carried back to the shore. When you come to believe these things and that all things are possible, that you can make these things happen because it is his world, his creation, his desire, he willed it, his story, the sacrifice of his son to demonstrate his love for us, then yes, it's all possible. And yes, there are greater things out there that you'll probably see with your own eyes. Then maybe you'll know that you were able to have been prepared, and that it will assist your faith even more so to listen to truth when it was speaking. I hope that you all take this into consideration. That's all I'm going to pray for after this video. And I hope that you all reason with the possibility that when you see it come true, you'll know that somebody was ahead of the game and was there looking out for you the entire time, and that truth spoke and testify even greater. If you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer them. For the most of this, you've already got everything you need to make your decision. May Yahuwah bless you in his son's name, Yusha. I bless your families with the understanding and knowledge and having the spirit to overcome what's coming. And I pray that you don't do something against your faith that causes you to inherit hell. Take care and have faith and stay humble.